Okay, we are live. Welcome to the stream, everyone. We got a pretty fun locals tonight. This one's in MRD format, which is really underexplored. Like, I only made one video on it, I think, ever. I guess I technically made two, but one of them was just sort of discussing the format from like a top view and not actually playing it. But anyways, this is the format that takes place right before Critter. So basically, use the Critter card pool, but the Yugi Kaiba limited list. And so it's very, very underexplored. No one really plays it. Even on my Discord, people don't really play it that much, although there has been some experimentation leading up to this. But yeah, we got 10 people playing. I think, yeah, this is probably the amount we're going to get. If there are any last minute signups, then like now is your time to do it. But I'm just going to shuffle up the seeds real quick here because I think this should probably be it. Let's shuffle them up. And yeah, I think it doesn't look like there are any last minute signups. So yeah, it's 1 minute past when I said we'd start. So let's just start the tournament. Yeah. So 10 people, not as many as in some of the past locals that we've held, but in the unlimited formats like this, it can be a bit tough to get too many people, but 10 is still a very good number, especially compared to like when we first started the locals and we could generally like struggle to get 8. I think 10 is a really good sign. I'm going to hop in to the general chat here. So that way, if anyone does want to sort of jump in and talk with me as the tournament goes on, they can. Although that probably won't happen until a bit later as people have matches to play. But this should be pretty fun. We're going to go into Dueling Book here and see what we can see. Let's duel. Let's see the duel room. And I don't know if anyone has started. Okay, looks like we got a potential game there. 2 potential matches to start off with. So that should be pretty exciting. And yeah, I'm excited to dive into these. It's tough to say what's going to happen in these because like I guess is that Exodia is, oh, maybe not tier 0, but very, very good in this format. Because Exodia has 3 Sangan, 3 Witch to search it out with. And so I think it will be a very, very good deck in this format because it's just so much searching power. And even in like Critter format, Exodia is already very good because it has that searching power of 2 Sangans and 2 Witches. So when you bump that up to 3 and also add in 2 more Mirror Forces, which is kind of a stalling tool, then I think it will get a lot better. So we'll have to see exactly how Exodia fares. I will say, now that people have submitted all their deck lists to me, there aren't too many people in this tournament on Exodia. I think people sort of thought it was the boring deck to play, and most people are trying out decks that, are a bit more interesting or off the wall. Just trying out different things. I think that makes sense. A lot of the people in my Discord are sort of like labbers. They sort of like get into these formats and they try and experiment with a bunch of different things. And I think that's a good thing, honestly, when exploring this sort of uncharted ground. But yeah, so it's a good thing to keep that in mind with these results. Although I will say that does mean that if Exodia does win, based on the number of entrants that brought Exodia, I do think that it is a very, very powerful deck in this format. And that will have just proved it. But we'll have to see exactly how these games go here. We got an ultimate offering flipped by History of YGO1 in the end phase. So we're already seeing something a little bit spicy here. So that's pretty exciting, honestly. Ultimate offering is an interesting card in this format because Heavy Storm is at 3 copies. So it can be a bit awkward here. But it looks like History of YGO1 is going to chain that to a Pot of Greed here. Bring out Cannon Soldier, and Cannon Soldier can get pretty nasty in this format because what you can do is you can just bring out Sangans and Witches, tribute them off with Cannon Soldier, and just keep paying with Ultimate Offering to get in a ton of damage. Because if you've got 6 Sangans and Witch of the Black Forest to go through off of the Cannon Soldier, that's 3,000 damage off that alone. Then you've also got the Cannon Soldier itself. And it looks like, History of YGO1 might also be able to get in some damage with the Lejin. Looks like Mirror Force will put a stop to that, though. Mirror Force 3 copies really does change this format as well. And I'm glad that we got to see that there turn 1 with the Mirror Force. And if Hobby has Heavy Storm in hand, this is a very tempting board to heavy. because, you know, these two cards are very high impact. But looks like they don't, or they're choosing not to activate it now. And I think that's fine. They don't really have... oh, maybe they have something to worry about because the Cannon Soldier plus Sangan Witch play is very explosive. But I think that ultimately it probably is fine here. Maybe they're saving the heavy for more live back row. Kind of interesting to see. Looks like a Last Will is coming down here. That's interesting because there aren't too many... Oh, double Last Will. Okay. Oh, well, Thunder Dragon triggering Sangan would be pretty good here. Are we about to see some Exodia action? Because Sangan searches out like a piece of Exodia. You get out multiple pieces of Exodia, or not multiple pieces of Exodia. You get out like multiple Sangan and Witches to basically threaten Exodia in hand. So this might mean that, okay, it looks like it's just a Giant Soldier of Stone there. And Hobby might bring out more recruiters. That would make sense. So it looks like not an Exodia play here. But it seemed like it might have been, which would have been very interesting. But that's going to be a Witch and a Sangan there. And yeah, it looks like that's probably just going to be a pass back to History of YGO1. Yep, and that is indeed the case. Pretty formidable board here. Pretty resilient to board clears. I'm not sure whether how we should have gone for this now or later. But I don't think it's a bad thing by any means. And it is kind of a risk because if they do have 3 pieces of Exodia in hand here, and they've got out a Sangan and a Witch, then that could potentially be the end of the game over the course of a couple turns. So it looks like History of YG1 is just setting the fort and passing. Maybe they have the read that Hobby does not have a heavy storm. Looks like Hobby's going to fire a Swords Revealing Light and pass. Yep, PJ Darkness, we've got MRD format, so very exciting to see this actually on camera. Very neat format. I'm curious to see how it will actually sort of turn out. But I mean, I don't have the highest hopes for this being like a decent format. Critter is very good, but I do think that there are some more degenerate things that you can do in MRD format to slow it down a little bit. Like the triple Mirror Force is pretty brutal. Triple Sangan, triple Witch is pretty rough as well for just like slowing down the game because you just get such a long resource chain. So, I mean, I guess it could just turn into grindier Critter, but like, I mean, I don't know. With all those recruiters, I feel like Exodia is just such a good deck that it might be pretty rough. And not just like a grindier form of Critter. But we'll have to see. I mean, this tournament should hopefully shed some light on how MRD format actually plays in a competitive setting. Although, you know, this isn't as competitive as something like the monthly tournaments that we have in the Discord as well. And if you want to like jump into any of these tournaments that we hold, we actually do have a Discord server. Link is in the description of the stream. And it's a great place to find games in these formats, any other formats that I've covered on the channel, and also to join these future events. I think that we've seen a lot of great growth recently, and I think it bodes well for the size of these events in the future. And it's really cool to see people really enjoying these old-time formats. So it looks like Hobby is just going to switch a Sangan and Witch to attack and just try and get in probably. Ultimate Offering is up so that, yep, and there's another Sangan as well. You can probably just flip up the Thunder Dragon as well because it's just getting in for more damage, right? But they probably don't want to play into like a Mirror Force. And if that is a Mirror, oh, it's just a Wuboku, that is fine. You know, I don't think that they really need to do much there. They're going to fire another Swords here as well. And it looks like that will be a pass back to History of YGO1, potentially. They could also potentially set some more back row, because it's very unlikely that History of YGO1 will be firing heavy anytime soon, given that they've got 4 cards in their back row themselves. But we'll just have to see. Let's see what they do here. Very slow game so far, though, I must say. Looks like they're just going to set one, set another, pass back to Hobby here. And Hobby's going to draw. Let's see what they do here. Pot of Greed, that's pretty good. I mean, one of the best cards you can draw in this game. And they're going to get 2 cards to hand. Change of Heart on the set. That's really good here for an aggressive push. And also, you know, Hobby does have Thunder Dragon in hand, so they can always tribute over the monster that they take. So that's very nice as well. Now the question is, are they? Oh no, looks like they're not going to flip up the Thunder Dragon there. If that is what it is, it might not be a Thunder Dragon. Could be something a bit more spicy. But we do know that they searched out some Thunder Dragons earlier, so it probably is the Thunder Dragon. Looks like History of YG1 is thinking here, probably about whether to actually commit a monster with the Ultimate Offering. And oh, it looks like they're taking all of this damage here. Wow, that's pretty big. That is really, really big here. They're dropping down to 2,600. So now Ultimate Offerings are kind of rough because you're getting to a very, very low spot. It looks like Hobby's just going to set one. And I assume Tribute set over the Lodge in here, unless they've got some other plans with it. But that makes the most sense to me. Now, oh, it looks like they're just passing back the Lodge in here. That's kind of interesting. I'm curious why they did that. Oh, end of main 2, they've got some here. Probably just desserts, maybe, if they're doing that. But, okay. So, I don't know why they're... I mean, yeah, they have to do it in main 2 because in end phase, that would not work out. Wow, double just desserts on a 5-monster board. Triple just desserts on a 5-monster board. That is pretty brutal. One cannon soldier will end the game at that point. Ooh, that's rough. That's really rough. Yeah, DL with a triple Mirror Force doesn't seem so mighty with 3 Sangan, 3 Witch. Yeah, I'd have to agree. It is kind of a bit rough here. And yeah, it feels difficult to get in any aggro play because of the searchers. And I would agree with that as well. People have sort of been experimenting with like cannon burn as a strategy because you've got all those different searchers. The cannons can really like get a long chain of monsters lined up. Looks like a Heavy Storm's coming down. That will get met with a Waboku here. And that will get met with a 7 tools. And, you know, again, this is why I'm like, why I really think Hobby should have attacked with the Thunder Dragon. And then that would have greatly changed things here. But as is now, they just lose the game if they don't have Karibo. But yeah, if they had attacked in with the Thunder Dragon, History of YGO1 would not have been able to activate that 7 tools. And it would not have turned out that way. So, yeah, I think that game, it was very interesting. We still don't quite know what each tools is on, although History of YGO1's on a bit of an Ultimate Offering sort of thing. It looks like this was hosted as a single, but yeah, just host matches in the future. That does just make it a bit easier. But yeah. So that happens. But yeah, I'm excited to see how game 2 goes. Let's check what other games are popping up here. In the meantime, let's see. I believe Aratos and Rainans are playing, so this will be fun. And we see a Muka. Muka is very nice here as well. So that's pretty good. And we see Sangan, Trap Hole, and Grave. We see a 7 tools on Aratos' part. So maybe that implies that Rainans tried to Trap Hole the Muka and then got 7 tooled. So 7 tools is another card people have been testing in this format a bit and seeing some pretty good results with. So good to know about. And a Reborn's coming down to bring back a Thunder Dragon. That's very interesting. Thunder Dragon hitting into the set here, but Rain Dance has Waboku. I don't know how I feel about that Waboku there. What do they want to preserve the Witch for? Must be for something, right? I mean, they'd be taking a fair amount of damage here, to be fair. So, like 2100 is nothing to scoff at, but I think you'd probably save the Waboku for later. But I don't know. We'll have to see. We don't know what's in Rain Dance's hand. So, and it looks like this is the second game of the match here. So, Rain Dance probably has a better idea of what Aratus is on than we do. So, yeah, it's tough to judge plays like that partway through. So, looks like a tribute over the Witch for a Thunder Dragon there. And that's pretty rough because that will enable Rain Dance to get a search here. But this will get pretty aggressive. And, you know, again, 6 searchers in the format. So it's not like this is an uncommon occurrence, right? This will be happening a lot in this format. So Razors might have just been like, well, I got to use the removal that I got and just go for it. Investing with Cole, they are using some banned cards because at this point in the game, it was not actually banned. So yeah, we're using the Yugi Kaiba limited list here. Oh, and Rain is on Exodia, it looks like. So they will take a fair amount of damage here. And again, this is why I was like, you know, you might as well save the Waboku for bigger damage here. But yeah, Radiance did get a piece to hand. So I'm kind of curious how close they are to the full gamut of Exodia pieces. They must be getting decently close. This also explains why Ratos has been getting aggressive here, reborning the Thunder Dragon, and just going all in. So we'll have to see whether Rain Dance can actually add all those pieces to hand, and it'll be quite interesting to do so. Yeah, Exodia impossible. It may seem impossible, but it seems like Rain's typing XD in the chat. Oh, rip! They forgot to Thunder Dragon first. Oh, that always hurts. So, yep, drew into the second Thunder Dragon. That's why you always got a Thunder Dragon when you're doing that sort of thing. Just thin out the deck a little bit and get more cards to hand. But yeah, that is pretty brutal. Pretty brutal to see that. Always unfortunate when that happens, but you know, misplays do occur in these tournaments, so you know, it does happen. Whether that misplay is going to cost Radiance the game or not remains to be seen. But you know, as I said, Radiance is up a game here, so it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if they lose, but it looks like Radiance might be within striking distance of lethal here. If they get another like Lodgin, or if they get a Cannon Soldier, that will just be the end of the game if Radiance doesn't have like Karibo, or if this doesn't add the last piece to hand. They're saying good game too, and it looks like that will be the end of the game. So it looks like they did not have the ability to add that last piece to hand. But, you know, as I said, who knows whether the Thunder Dragon misplay would have actually mattered or not in the end there. I'll have to wait and see. But looks like this match has gone on a bit more quickly than the other match. Let's dive in to another game here and see what's going on with Dump Truck and Soul. There they are. Let's dive into this one, see how it's going. And it looks like Dump Truck has won the first game here against Soul. So I'm curious to see. I mean, maybe we should check back on the Hobby versus History of YGO 1 game, given how that game has been going. They should be done with siding, hopefully. Let's see. Yep, they are indeed done with siding here. It looks like Hobby's got a Muka Muka out on field, very strong. They're going to hit into that set. It's a Sangan, so Sangan will be able to add a card from deck to hand here. So let's see what they get. They're getting a Witch. That's pretty good. And Sangan will hit in for 1,000 here. And History of YGO 1 will take it. It looks like they're just going to pass back. And History of YGO 1, let's see what they do. So we know about the Witch, search to hand here. So it looks like they're setting one, setting another, passing. That probably is the Witch set, maybe. We'll have to see. Looks like that Muka is going up to 2,100 here. And let's see how it does. Mirror Force, yep. Triple Mirror Force format. That happens sometime, but the Sangan there will get Hobby as search here. So it won't be the worst thing in the world. Looks like they're going to add another Witch, keep that resource train going, makes sense. And they are going to pass back to History of YGO 1. History of YGO 1 can potentially get in some damage here, flipping up that Witch and hitting in. I'm curious why Hobby didn't actually set the Witch. They hadn't summoned that turn. So they could have staved off a little bit of damage here, gotten a monster on field to safeguard against maybe a second second Mirror Force play. But yeah, we'll have to see. So they're going to set to pass back to History of YGO 1 there. And let's see what they do. Looks like they're just turtling up, switching that Witch to defense. And just passing back. Okay. Pot of Greed here is pretty good. They're waiting to, yep, and that will resolve. Let's see here. And that Lodgin is coming down there. Pretty big monster. I'm curious if History of Wadjo 1 will let it stick or if they've got a trap hole potentially for it. Looks like that is good. And that's a Muka Muka with 6 cards in hand. Now it's making a little more sense why they kept the Witch in hand potentially. Just to buff up this Muka Muka to extreme levels. And they're going to hit into that Witch. History of Wadjo 1 likely doesn't have a Mirror Force here. And it looks like they don't. Because they had set the other Mirror Force earlier. So this will potentially be a fair amount of damage. 2400 is nothing to scoff at here. They'll add a Sangan to hand though. That Muka will hit in 424, but the Waboku is going to get flipped up here. I think they probably could have saved the Waboku. I mean, again, I mentioned this in the other sort of match we saw. Like, 2400 is rough, but I don't think you necessarily need to use it yet, right? Like, unless you know your opponent's on, like, a burn strat. I feel like you just save it for when it's more effective, but... I mean, you never know. And, Heavy Storm in hand makes sense for using the Waboku there because you want to use it up, get value out of it, and then fire Heavy to clear the back row. So that makes sense. And it looks like History of Wadjo 1 is just going to set 2, pass back to Hobby here. Losing the Mirror Force is pretty rough, but they've got 2 more Mirror Forces left in deck. And the Waboku did get some value. So they're going to bring out a Witch here, try and get a bit aggressive. And it looks like that will go through. You don't want to trap hole a Witch, even though sometimes you may be forced to. But it looks like they're going to attack in with the Muka there. Mirror Force will get flipped up, clearing that field. But again, Witch came down. So Hobby will get a search off that Witch. So it isn't the worst thing in the world here. Let's see what they search out. They could search out another Muka, given that they've got a very, very powerful hand. A very thick hand, at least. Looks like they're going to search out a Magician of Faith instead. Fire a Last Will here. Pretty good at just sort of walling up some more. Potentially bringing out a Muka or just another recruiter like a Sangan or a Witch, because there still are a lot of those left in deck. It looks like the Witch is coming out here. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it looks like they're going to pass back to History of Wadjo 1. Looks like they're kind of back row light this game. Always unfortunate. But it can happen. It looks like History of Wadjo 1 is just going to wall up a little bit more, set another pass back to Hobby. And let's see how this goes. PJ Arts of Darkness says, do you feel like Stall Mill could still be relevant in this format? Potentially. The issue with Stall Mill in this format is that, Ultimate Offering is cleared by Heavy Storm. And Heavy Storm's at 3 this format, which ultimately gives Stall Mill kind of a worse matchup. Or like a worse chance than it would have in Critter format. And in Critter format, it already isn't the best. I did do a video on Stall Mill in Critter format using a deck that, I forget who sent it to me, but someone tinkered with that deck in Critter, and it didn't actually, do the best. It did okay, but it wasn't the best. And compared to something like Exodia, which is much better in my opinion, I don't really think Stall Mill can actually win games, even though there are some nice things about it. You've got your recruiters just getting you advantage throughout the entire time, so you always have monsters to bring out. But yeah, it just feels like there are so many things stacked against Stall Mill in this format. Also, there are more side deck cards. Like Jiraigumo is a very good side deck card against Stall Mill because you can hit over the 2K defenders that Stall Mill would normally play. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it. Also, Cannon Soldier just sitting on field, tributing off monsters can also just burn your opponent out. So yeah, I feel like Stall Mill is a bit iffy in this format, but it does have a decent matchup against Exodia, potentially. If Exodia can't get off to the races enough and, search out pieces fast enough, then, you'll be in a decent spot there. And we see the Jiraigumo added to hand there. Very interesting choice. A bit risky because it does have your life points, potentially. But it is, I think, better than Dark Elf in this format because, Dark Elf... it can't get over 2K defenders, and 2K defenders are still meta relevant here, and you do really want to get over them if you are committing to paying life points to an attack. Looks like Hobby's going to bring out a Sangan here, try and get in for a fair bit of damage, hitting in with the Legend first. Let's see if it's the third and final Mirror Force, but it looks like History of Wadjo 1 is going to take all that, dropping them down to 4,200. Now, we know about the Jiraigumo in hand, so that could potentially come out next turn and hit over the Lajin, which would be kind of rough for Hobby. They're going to set one pass back to History of Wadjo 1 here. And let's see what happens. Looks like History of Wagyu 1 is just going to wall up a little bit, setting 1 and passing back, or potentially setting a back row if they're thinking about this. They might be wondering, does Hobby have Heavy Storm? Are they willing to commit Heavy Storm if they've already got a back row set? So it'll be interesting to see how they do here. Looks like they are going to set into that second back row there. So they're basically saying to Hobby, you don't have the pro heavy set, and even if you have heavy in hand, you're not going to use it on your own back row, or if you do, that'll basically be 2-for-2 trade, and also, Boku or something would make that a lot less valuable. But looks like Hobby's going to hit in with the Lajin here. History of Wagyu 1's thinking, they're checking their graveyard, potentially seeing how many Mirror Forces they've used up, and debating whether to use up a Mirror Force here. They are thinking for a bit, so that they probably have something here. Either Wuboku or Mirror Force is a likely option. Looks like a Sangan will get... Oh, interesting. Yeah, that must have been a misclick, I guess. They probably clicked Declare Effect and accidentally clicked Go to Hand. But yeah, they will be able to get a search here. And they're going to search out a Witch. Yep, that's how it goes. Sangan will hit in here. 4,000, dropping them down to 3,200. Now, keep in mind, Cannon Soldier is a consideration in this format because Cannon Soldier can do a lot of damage out of, not nowhere, but it can do a lot of damage very suddenly. So you always have to be aware of that when you are getting down to very low life points. And that set might be a Magician of Faith, or it might be bait. It might be like a Sangan or a Witch or something. Looks like History of Wagyu 1 is going to Change of Heart that just to check. And if it is a Magician of Faith, that's going to be really rough for Hobby here. They're checking their graveyard, seeing what they got. I mean, even getting back like the Change of Heart is going to be good here. Or you could get back Heavy for later. And you're depriving Hobby of using the Magician of Faith to get back that Pot of Greed. So pretty good if you're History of Wagyu 1, in my opinion. They can't really get super punishing here. Like, you could potentially bring out like Gumo and potentially Change of Heart the Lajin and get in a ton of damage that way. But it's not really worth doing that in most cases, as, it's 3,300, but, Hobby will still have plenty of life points left. So you might actually want to save the Change of Heart for later. Hobby will know about it, but it's a bit interesting. So we'll have to see what History of Wagyu 1 does here. But there are a lot of potential options. And also, they've got 6 other cards in hand. So they likely have other things to do as well. So I'll be curious to see. I'm just going to check to see if anyone has actually finished. Helios Strider won that game there. So let's put that in. So Helios Strider has beaten GMYFS. Okay, so they have moved on. And it looks like History of Wagyu 1 to bring out Cannon Soldier using Prio to tribute off that Magician of Faith there, dealing 5, getting in for 400 there. If they've got Cannon Soldier, maybe it would have been worth it actually to Change of Heart the Lodge and just go in for more damage and also have a monster tribute off of the Cannon Soldier. That might have actually been the move. But it looks like they're saving their Change of Heart for later. So the fact that they've got just a Cannon Soldier committed to board here implies that they might have like a Wuboku or a Mirror Force set to protect it. And yeah, I mean, that's what I'm assuming because they're past max. So probably like a Wuboku set to just keep that on field, even in the face of like a heavy. Because as is, this Cannon Soldier is very, very vulnerable. Looks like Muka Muka is coming down. And that will be a pretty beefy Muka Muka. That's 2,100, so 2,700 attack here. That is pretty beefy. And if History of Wagyu 1 doesn't have something to stop this, then this could potentially be near the end of the game. But looks like History of Wagyu 1 is going to let that stick on field. Again, I discussed the possibility of them having Mirror Force on a previous turn when they check their graveyard. So, could be that. Could also just be a Wuboku that's set. Could be both even. But we'll have to see exactly how this goes. It looks like a Fisher's coming down on the Cannon Soldier there. And this will indeed be lethal damage if this actually all connects. But it looks like the Mirror Force will be flipped up. Pop that field. And we'll have to see exactly how this goes. Because with an empty field and Change of Heart in hand, that is pretty risky for Hobby here. Let's see what Hobby's going to do here. They do have 7 cards in hand, so they need to commit something to board here, or else they'll have to discard at the end of the turn. It looks like they're going to Reborn here. I'm curious what they're going to bring back. They're going to bring back a Muka Muka here. I think, yeah, I think Muka is probably the right choice. If they had Reborn in hand, they could have actually not done the Fisher play right away. They could have just attacked into the Cannon Soldier and hit over it. And if History of Wedge 1 hadn't used Mirror Force, then change of hearts coming down on the Muka. But if History of Wedge 1 hadn't used Mirror Force, then they'd be at 100 life points left. And then you could Fisher the Cannon Soldier, Reborn it back, and win the game that way. But I don't think, I mean, ultimately in this sort of game state, it's all the same, really, at this point. So, not terrible. I'm curious to see what History of Wedge 1 will actually be willing to commit here. Are they going to bring out, like, something like a Jirai Gumo and just get in for a ton of damage? Or are they just going to hit in? Looks like they're just going to hit in for 24 here, and that will indeed connect. So, they're going to go for a Reborn here, probably targeting the Cannon Soldier. And that will be able to tribute off the Muka Muka and, you know, get Hobby down to 3,000. So the life points are somewhat equalized here. And in terms of card advantage, both players are relatively the same. But the field presence definitely belongs to History of Wedge 1 right now. They're going to set 2, pass back to Hobby. And let's see how this goes. Dark Hole the board, that's a good start. And that will indeed clear a Magician of Faith. Very, very powerful card to clear here. Very good that Hobby did that. They're going to bring out a Mass Sorcerer. This is going to be a really big swing if it connects. 3 Mirror Forces are in the graveyard. So the only thing that stops this is a Woboku. Question is, yep, blah, looks like they are going to commit to that. Just deprive Hobby of the card advantage. But this is still looking pretty good for Hobby here. If that back row is live, then this could be pretty rough for History of YG01. We'll have to see exactly what they do here. I'm just going to check real quick. Looks like Aratos won that match there. So let's just put in that. Yep, looks like they're still thinking. Let's see. Okay, it looks like Soul and Dump Truck are still playing. And yeah. Okay, it looks like History of YG01 after thinking for a bit, they're going to set 1 pass. So that could be like a Sangan or a Witch that or it can't be a Sangan. It might be a Witch though. Just something that they didn't necessarily want to commit into like a trap hole or something. If that is a Witch, History of YG01 is going to feel pretty good here. And it is indeed a Witch. So Hobby will take 100. Probably switch the mask to defense because like, yeah, it walls up against Witch. But yeah, this is a bit exposed to History of YG01's own like board clears, like Raigeki or Dark Hole. And if there is a Raigeki or Dark Hole, then History of YG01 also gets a search off that as well. But it looks like they're just going to hit in to the Witch here. Yeah, I guess they're just crashing, getting a search off. And let's see what they each search. We do know about a Jirai Gumo in History of YG01's hand. So they could be searching like another big beater like that. Looks like Hobby's going to search a Magician of Faith here. Kind of risky. Change of Heart's gone. The risky thing would be if History of YG01 has another Faith. They get back like a Change of Heart or something. But yeah, it looks like they're just going to search out a Lodge In, which is a bit more of a versatile beater and one that you might be more comfortable using when you have relatively low life points. They're going to then set 2 and pass back to Hobby here. And they're going to think about this. Raigeki on the new back row. I think that makes a lot of sense because the Witches are gone, the Sangans are gone. So you're in a pretty good spot here. And I think you can get a little bit more aggressive because all the Mirror Forces are gone. So you might as well summon out Monster, just hit in, right? Yep, Sangan comes out. And it looks like Hobby is going to hit in for a fair bit. Here's what everyone's thinking here. So they might have a Trap Hole or a Solemn. Solemn would be pretty rough for them, though, because, yep, it's just a Trap Hole. Solemn will drop them down to 1,600, and then they drop down to 700 after the Mass Sorcerer hit. They didn't have Woboku. But, yeah. Awesome, Billy Bob Joe. Welcome to the stream. Glad to have you here. We've got a pretty intense match here between Hobby and History of YGO1. I missed what they searched. Let's see. Have they gone through all their Sangans and Witches? They have indeed gone through all their Sangans and Witches. So I'm curious what they searched here. The game might actually be getting close to deck out here. Have we seen a swords out of History of YGO1? We have not. So if History of YGO1 has enough swords and Hobby does not have heavy storms or doesn't draw it, well, they draw into them eventually, but heavy storm is coming down here. Waboku is going to be chained to that. Makes sense. And let's see what happens. Yep, that is a Mirror Force there. History of One's thinking on this is kind of awkward because the other back row was revealed already. So if you want to like chain like 7 tools or something, you should probably make that clear sooner. I mean, this is like a casual tournament, so it wouldn't be the worst thing here, and it's not like Hobby like could do something here, but like yeah, it would be a bit of an iffy thing in like a bigger tournament, like in a more serious one. Yeah, 7 tools is going to get fired here. But again, it kind of iffy there. Always make sure to let your opponent know that you have to think about a response here. Especially in a thing like that where, you know, it doesn't really matter. It like you're going to be revealing what your face down is either way, so it doesn't really matter that much if you're like, thinking. Okay, looks like History of YGO1 is going FK for a little. So actually, let's hop out of this one and dive into another game. Because I don't want to stall out the stream for too much, even though that match is really intense. So very, very curious how that will turn out. Let's dive in to the other last match of round 1 here with Dumbstruck versus Soul. It looks like it's 1-1. And we see a fair amount of game has gone by for both players here. So cool to see. Looks like Dumbstruck's going to search out a Lodge In that contests Soul's Lodge In. Especially with a Witch on field. You could, oh, well, that set will probably contest the Witch, or at least prevent the Witch from getting in. Yeah, there's a Lodge In coming down. Probably going to just crash or maybe hit into the set. That will indeed hit into their Lodge In. I feel like it probably could have hit into the set because, like, then they have to clear the Lodge In next turn with their Lodge In potentially, but maybe you don't want Soul to get a search here. That could be it. I don't know, a bit tricky. And we do know Dumbstruck probably has 2 Thunder Dragons in hand. So 2 Thunder Dragons, 2 other cards that we don't know. Let's see. Soul also probably has 2 Thunder Dragons in hand. So actually like a relatively even game state here between these 2 players. Looks like Soul's just going to set 1 pass back to Dumbstruck. Still faster paced than full power tier mirrors, lol. That, yeah, I mean, yeah. The games might end in fewer turns, but I feel like the decision making in those tier mirrors definitely drags out the games for quite a bit. Whereas here the decisions are a bit simpler. There's still definitely a lot of decisions to make, don't get me wrong. But it is a bit more like, you know, what do I commit to board? What do I bring out? Like, yeah, what do I keep in hand? Things like that. Looks like we're going to see a Last Will fired in main 2, bring out another monster from deck. Looks like that'll bring out another Muka Muka. Muka Muka Turbo, pretty good in this meta, honestly. With the 3 Mirror Forces, you can have your Last Wills turned online more and more. So it makes sense as a nice meta call there. So we're just going to set 1 pass back. Let's see what Dumbstruck will do here. Looks like Muka's going to hit into the set here. And that will be a Sangan. So Soul 65 will get a search here. And they're going to search out a Witch of the Black Forest here. Pretty good. Okay, and Dumbstruck's going to set 1 and pass back. Let's see what Soul does. This is a bit of a threatening board, especially with 1,800 life points. You gotta have some way to clear it, or else the Muka threatens lethal next turn. Let's see how many mirror forces are used up. Only one mirror force used up. Oh, but Magician of Faith potentially getting back that heavy. Clearing souls remaining back row. Yeah. Uh Tells one says, I do think it takes more skill to play a slower game and than it is to play a fast game. And I agree, but I also think that like it takes a different set of skills, right? Um so I'm not by saying like that it's faster potentially than tier limit mirrors. I'm not trying to say that one is more skillful than the other. I'm just trying to say that they're like different sorts of experiences and they definitely take a different skill set. Like there's a lot of different things that you have to manage in a tier limit mirror than you have to manage in a critter game or in an MRD game, like the ones that we're showing off here. But it looks like Dump Truck will just hit in with the Muka Muka there into the set. And then hit in with the Magician of Faith. Now, this is a bit of an interesting position because there is a reason why you might potentially do that. Because 300 life points cuts down Soul to 1,500. And if Soul's at 1,500 and Dump Truck has 2 monsters on board, could be a cannon soldier in Soul's future. So you actually might want to Waboku this, but a bit tricky here. Looks like they are indeed going to take it. So I've got to assume that Dump Truck has a cannon soldier, or at least was trying to. Yep, there's the cannon soldier. They are. Yep, they're going to use Prio to tribute off the Magician of Faith. This means if Soul does have a trap hole here, then at least they still get in some damage. And the interesting thing about this, yeah, okay, that will go through. I was going to say the interesting thing about this is if Soul does have trap hole and Dump Truck has something like 7 tools or Solemn, and Soul has like 7 tools or Solemn of their own, and they are dropping down extremely low. So the Cannon Soldier is getting in damage either way here. And it looks like that Cannon Soldier will indeed be the end of the game. So Dump Truck will indeed take that one. Yeah, let's load that into the chart here. So very, very intense game though, for what we saw. And it went to game 3, so pretty exciting to see. So now we've got Danny versus Dump Truck. So should be a pretty good one. But let's see what else we got going on here. We've still got the game between Hobby and History of Wajo 1, I believe. Let's just see it. Regis and Colgate. Oh, do we not? Is that wrapped up? And I can type it in here. Oh yeah, there it is. Let's see how that game is going. Okay, the game is still going, so I assume that this is okay, this is game 3. So it looks like Hobby won the second game. It's just because it's set up like singles instead of a match. That's why it worked out like that. So Hobby will get off to a strong start in terms of damage here. But this is a kind of risky board given that, well, I guess one heavy is gone, so it's not as bad. But you're using up your second swords for this, so bit interesting here. We do see the Gumo as well, and it looks like I wonder how that Gumo was used. If Blah actually got an attack off of it, or if it was just sort of used as a wall. Interesting card, Gumo. Same with Dark Elf. Hello. Welcome to the stream, Soul and Food. Yeah. So we caught the end of your game, Soul, and it looked pretty intense.
Yeah, it was. I definitely was expecting to sort of lose, but I can't believe it lasted for as long as it did.
Yeah. So, do you want to share with people what deck you were on? Because we didn't like. I've been watching like other games, in this stream, but your deck was very cool. So, you want to share what you were on?
Yeah, I wanted to try Harpies since that was the deck I really liked in Critter, and I think it didn't win, and I didn't move on, but I don't think it really was like the Harpies' fault per se. I think just like this is a different format, right? Like you have to be worried about like Mirror Force. You know, there's 3 heavies and things like that. So um, I think it. I don't know. I think the deck. You know, I need to. I didn't really test it either, so I feel like I
Hmm.
need a little bit more. But I think the deck. I don't know. To me, the idea why I was fine with taking was because I essentially was going to maybe take a similar deck, which was a Muka Turbo inspired list anyhow. So basically, why not just have harpies in it
Yeah.
as well?
No, I think that's a good sort of philosophy to have there. And I do think you're right that there are some advantages to harpies in this format. You can get in a fair bit of damage. Also, you can set up cannon soldier fields because you're basically getting 2 monsters for the price of one. Um, and so I do think it does have some benefits. But yeah, I mean, as you said, this format's very untested, and I don't think you were the only one that didn't really test out too much before this started. So I'm curious to see how this sort of affects everyone else as well. Um, and it's interesting
Yeah,
because I mentioned earlier in the stream that this might not be like super indicative of what the format looks like overall potentially because there were a bit less of a particular deck than I expected. um, and there was a bit
okay.
more actually of Muka Muka Turbo. So I'm curious, like it's a small sort of competition here, just 10 people, but
Yeah,
I'm yeah.
but
Uh,
I can understand like bringing that deck though, just because that like what that deck is trying to do is be a very have this big monster, and you're able to do a lot of damage, and you have like cards like Last Will that can help benefit from that. And then depending as well if they some Muka Muka lists will play card destruction, and that's pretty nice against Exodia too. So I can understand choosing it as a contender.
Yeah, and also Mirror Force will make Last Will on potentially more of the time. So,
Yeah, that
uh,
too.
yeah. Look, ooh, Witch into the set. Hello, Colgate, welcome. Uh,
Yeah.
man, Outrageous is blazing through this tournament. uh,
Isn't it crazy that I played Barrel Dragon and the reason that I lost was not Barrel Dragon?
it's kind of
Really?
funny because Soul played Harpies, and he actually said, "I'm not sure it was the Harpies' fault why they
Yeah.
lost." So,
No,
like,
I like won game one convincingly. Game two I got Exodia, and game three I just didn't draw any spell in the first 23 or like 17 cards, which it happens.
yeah, there's always going to be
Yeah.
variance in any of these formats, but that's the fun of playing them. And I think like we saw in the Critter format tournament that wrapped up a bit ago, where Labyrinth Tank Turbo was second place. Um, that there is room for these sort of more like not like well they are more jank, but I like more like swingy decks, like the decks that need time to like build up their combo and then go for that. There is room for that
Yeah.
in this format for sure.
I
Um,
guess you can call them like setup decks where they need like certain conditions to do their like combo or
yeah,
win condition. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And it sort of flies in the face of a lot of conventional wisdom about this format, or I guess Critter format, because there's no real conventional wisdom about MRD format. But,
Yeah.
for the longest time, people had really focused on the format as just like a control mirror format, right? And then Paolo NS and some others tested out an Exodia build, and the Exodia build turned out to be really good. So people were like, okay, it's a control mirror format or Exodia format, right? Like those are the top two decks. And then Muka Muka Turbo started coming out, and people were like, okay, well it's those three decks, that's it. But it's still like very focused on just long grindy games with like one for one trades and just trying to eke out as much advantage as you can. And I think that the Labyrinth Take Turbo deck winning shows that like there is another axis that these decks can play on where they go for damage instead. Um, and we've seen a little bit of that in the past with like certain cannon burnlets topping. But those decks like uh I mean they felt very, very unpolished and very sort of unfinished. So I don't think people really considering them as seriously as they might otherwise. Um, Yeah, but I want to mention in chat, PJ Arts of Darkness says Aratos too good, and they really are. Aratos is one of the best duelists in the server in a variety of formats, I think. So awesome always to have them compete in these events.
Yeah. Okay. To be fair, I'm just remembering my game
Mhm.
back with Dump Truck. I do think like I do remember. I think at least game one, like, I did sort of brick and like get the unfortunate two Thunder Dragon hand as well as like Harpy Lady
Mm.
Sisters in the opening. So there was that. But I feel like in like I think the thing about the even in the games I bricked though, it's like I think there was ways for me to still potentially win with what I had, I guess. But
Yeah,
obviously, it's not the best position to deal with that, you know?
yeah, and that's part of the difficulty I think with having this format so untested, right? Because like the way you tell whether those sorts of bricks are impactful in a long term or short term is just doing a bunch of tests, right? Like you play a bunch of
Yeah,
games in the format. You know, if you notice that like whenever you brick on those cards, you lose the game, then that's maybe a sign that it's like very impactful in the game and you can't afford to run actually that package and brick on it. Um, but that just takes a lot of testing, and there just hasn't been much testing in this format. And I don't blame people for not testing this format because it is extremely close to Critter, and I think that the sort of things that make it different from Critter are not necessarily, uh, the most pleasant. Like Triple Mirror Force is not necessarily everyone's idea of a good time, along with like Triple Witch, Triple Sangan. So I get why people don't really play this. And to be honest, I mean, this isn't really one of my favorite formats either. Um, but it is interesting, and I'm curious to see if after this event wraps up, if people are a bit more interested in it and are just sort of like, huh, maybe we should test it out a little bit more and just see how it differs from Critter and what the actual layout of the meta is like.
yeah. Maybe it's similar to like a situation with what, formerly SDYK, but Colgate came up with the great worm format, which I think maybe it's indicative of what's going to happen in MRD, where it's like you have to maybe not necessarily consider the same principles of Critter as with MRD, or at
Mm.
least like shuffle it around a little. Like at least with my list, I was like, I don't think Fissure is really that impactful if Exodia is going to be that prevalent in the format, and even
So
like yeah,
just a fun fact that's actually why I went to Barrel Dragon, because I just figured everyone would be off of Fissure, and then I could just like sit on Barrel Dragon,
yeah,
which in defense mode doesn't have to fear Mirror Force.
That's true.
that
Uh,
too, yeah,
the
yeah.
the
No, I
unfortunate.
obviously some.
Oh,
Oh,
oh, you go.
sorry.
Yeah.
Good. I
Uh,
was just gonna say yeah, but it seems like people are still on it, but I think it's just gonna depend as well on like if if Exodia maybe is neutralized enough that Fissure seems okay. But I do think with the three Witch and the three Sangin, it just doesn't feel as great to have just one for one removal. And I rather if I feel like Mirror Force. Even then, I was only playing two because I felt like well Mirror Force can still be dead if you're up against Exodia, but. I guess what we have to figure out is how good Exodia really is, and
mm.
Yeah,
that
speaking of
determines what we
Exodia,
have.
could I just say I completely forgot card destruction was a deck, and then I saw Exodia on stream, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, no. It well, card
Yeah,
destruction is very good, but it's not searchable, which is kind of the iffy thing about it. Now, this might be the end of the game here if those two sets are double just desserts, which we actually did see on stream in game one. History Wajo one used triple just desserts on a full field, and that actually killed their opponent. So we'll have to see exactly what those sets are, but they are dropping pretty low. So I feel like they must have a lethal line here, or else they wouldn't do this.
yeah. What game is this for
This
them?
is game
Is it
three.
game three?
Um,
Okay, yeah. I had a feeling with it going as long as it did.
yeah.
Isn't it crazy with MRD that they printed Witch and Sangan, and then like the best monster of the previous hack was like Skull Redbird.
This has got to be double just desserts. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's wild the amount of sort of power creep just with that.
All right.
Okay, now is that set a is it like yep, it's not a 7 tools.
Well,
7 tools would have done it there, but
well, actually, I don't think it would, because then they would be at 16. Actually, no, yeah,
no,
you're
it would have
right.
barely
But
done
then you
it.
could,
Um
yeah, you
I
have barely done it, but I guess like,
I think
yeah.
honestly, History of Watch 1 should have tributed off the cannon soldier they kept on field there just to play around. I mean, then they'd be at 100, I guess, but yeah. So it looks like Blah will be moving on to the next round there. Whoops.
All
There we go.
right. Well,
So,
hello there,
hello,
Neb.
Neb.
Hey, Neb.
Welcome.
Hello.
Uh,
I was not ready for the burn still.
yeah, the Just Desserts plays. Oof.
I don't think anyone was.
Yeah, it was also
Yeah.
sad because game 1, you were actually still potentially in it if you had flipped up the Thunder Dragon and attacked in the previous turn, because then there would be no 7 tools. But it's tough to like think that far. Like you don't anticipate Just Desserts, triple Just Desserts, for 7,500 points of damage. So yeah, not much you could have done there, unfortunately.
Am I
Yeah,
crazy, or is like 7 tools like main deckable in this format? There's so many good traps.
Oh, I think it is.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You got
I
3
have
Mirror Force,
2
3
of
Uboku,
mine.
and then all the other
3
counter traps
trap
as
pool.
well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely pretty good. But hello, Blah. Congratulations on
Hey.
the victory that round.
cool to see burn.
Hello
play.
again.
Yeah. Oh, Mirror Force on a Witch always feels super bad. I mean, Dump Truck will be able to get a draw here if this Mass Sorcerer attack connects, but oof, that hurts.
Yeah.
But I guess they're just hoping Danny doesn't have like a Uboku or Mirror Force. Or they could have a heavy in hand as well. And there's sort of like because then that would deal with like a Mirror Force, right? And also enable them to play the heavy because they've got their Mirror Force gone. So
Yeah.
Why
No, it
does
is,
it
like-
feel like Helios Trident copied the deck I posted yesterday? You're not watching that, and we're just looking at that match right now.
Oh, okay.
Just to
Well,
see.
I can tell you that they did not copy the deck you posted the other day. Yeah, they did not. They're on something pretty interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah.
If I saw like a peek of it, if it was what I think it is, it definitely could have potential, I think. But yeah.
Yeah. That is actually potentially a game to check out. Should we just jump into that actually? I think I might jump into that because I want to make sure that, that deck is not lost to Aretos's potential sort of win streak if they keep it up. So
I guess we can give it a quick look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do want to show this deck off on camera potentially. I feel like we've gotten a good sense of like some different matchups here. Like we've seen some Muka Muka Turbo, we've seen some Burn, we've seen some other stuff. Haven't really seen. I guess we saw a little bit of Exodia with Rain Dance, but we didn't really get to see a full game of that. But yeah.
I was actually on Exodia in my game.
Yeah, we didn't get to actually see that game 1. I was hoping to.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why I built the deck the way I did.
Yeah, I realized like I'm saying a bunch of guys, so I'm like I gotta switch out.
Yeah, but
Yeah, and then I switched out
It-
because I knew you'd switch out.
it's funny because the turn that you went for like the multiple last roll, I was like, oh, are we gonna see Exodia come down here? Like, I got pretty excited, but no, I think
I couldn't convert off them. Like couldn't get
Yeah.
them to the grave, sadly.
Yeah, no, that's what I figured. So I was like, okay, it's just a positional play, but I think it was a good play. Like when you did it, just getting out the recruiters from deck, thinning it so that way you draw into pieces potentially. So yeah, I think it was a good play, but I was like, oh, are we about to see a dark hole potentially?
Yeah.
I
I was thinking like I got all these guys out, so I might as well attack with them. Hopefully
no.
Mirror Force goes off.
I think that was a very good thing to do, and I think
Makes sense.
you honestly almost won through damage. Yeah, like I think like maybe if you had flipped up Thunder Dragon attack, then it would have been different. But again, triple Mirror Force in the format, I don't necessarily blame you for not doing that, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I did misplay
actually-
turn 1 though. I didn't search with my Thunder Dragon I had in hand because I wasn't sure if I wanted to reveal if I had those or not.
yeah, and potentially signal that you were
Honestly,
on Exodia.
it probably wouldn't have made that much of a difference, only to thin your deck more.
Well,
And
that
maybe
is-
get better draws later.
I mean, that
Yeah,
is
I drew
why-
the second Thunder.
Yeah, I mean that's why people play Thunder Dragon, right? It's to thin the deck more.
Yeah.
So
I'm saying that's the only difference that would have been made there and changed what he drew.
Oh, we've got some comments in the YouTube chat. Raina says the Exodia side was meh. The bird was good though. So it looks like that was an Exodia side deck. And I did actually say at the start of this that we didn't actually have many applicants with Exodia. I guess I'll reveal the identity of that deck since we've got a better idea of the layout. But not many people actually brought Exodia because they wanted to experiment with sort of other things. Which I think makes sense given the Discord server that we got, you know. A lot of very creative
I
people.
fully expect to
testing out
lose in the semifinals if neither of them are on Exodia.
Well, we'll see. You never know. I mean, if you can pull off some more 7,500 Just Dessert plays, then that's pretty good. But yeah, Austin Billy Bob Joe also says, "Oh, Radiance is a person." Honestly, thought he was talking about card. Oh yeah. Rain Dance is one of the duels that we saw earlier against Aratos. We only briefly saw them though, so
Yeah. It's not the Pokemon move.
yeah.
You're thinking that as well.
I'm surprised we haven't gotten a Yu-Gi-Oh card called Rain Dance.
Yeah. I don't know.
Probably
like
because of Pokemon.
Well,
Well, that's why I'm surprised we haven't gotten it.
Too
You know,
vague.
it's a reference.
I don't know. But it's too vague. Like I don't think you could really name something Rain Dance. I guess.
Yeah,
It
maybe.
needs to.
I mean, there are a fair amount of
but
vague
yeah.
names in Yu-Gi-Oh. You know,
There is
like
that too,
Raigeki.
yeah.
That's like a relatively vague name.
Well, okay, maybe in Japanese then they would do it, but
Oh, there
or
might
at
be
least
like,
back in the day.
yeah.
Have people tested out the catapult combo in this format?
Not yet.
Yeah, not the catapult combo, but there is actually a combo you can do with Cannon Soldier and the Ultimate Offering, just a string of recruiters, as we saw in the game between you and Blah. That can be very
Yeah.
strong because that's 3,500 damage there.
Yeah.
But
No, like I definitely feel like it was a deck to consider. Like I actually thought about bringing it up. I like was watching your video and I was like, maybe I can adjust it for MRD and see how it goes. But I was like, you know what? I like Harpies, so I'll play that instead.
no, I think that was a nice call too. I think Muka Muka has shown itself to be a very powerful deck based on what we've seen of it in some of the games here. Which I think makes sense. You got triple Sang and triple Witch. That's going to keep the hand stuffed a lot of the time. And your last will's on a lot more because of the mirror forces. Like,
yeah.
So
definitely.
Yeah.
As much as Mirror Force also kind of counters Muka Muka for obvious reasons.
Well, yes, but that's the sort of back and forth of this sort of thing, and
yeah.
Oh, Raigeki's pretty good here, although it might just hit a bunch of recruiters. Oh,
I'm keeping.
There we see. We see a potential hint as to what Helios Trident might be on. Gigatech Wolf.
He's on that.
Yeah, so
that makes sense.
We referenced this earlier in the stream, but the last Critter tournament was actually won by Labyrinth Tank Turbo, which was a deck playing a bunch of Cannon Soldiers, some Gigatech Wolves, or it was second, but it did very well. But it was I got it right earlier in the stream, but it was basically a deck playing a bunch of Cannon Soldiers, some Gigatech Wolves, and some polymerizations. So you could actually go into Labyrinth Tank, which is a fusion monster made up of Cannon Soldier and Gigatech Wolf, as well as other things like Twin-Head Thunder Dragon as well. And so, you know, there is a potential deck that people can play in this locals, and it seems like we've got someone on it here, which is why I wanted to show this deck off, because I think it's really cool. And yeah, that Moth is going to be pretty good here. I don't what do you even get? Do you just get like pot? Because if you get Raigeki or Dark Hole, they're just going to not really commit monsters that aren't recruiters. Yeah, it's getting pot.
Yeah.
I think that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Goodness, yeah. Well, like Gigatech Wolf basically is just the Harpy Lady for that version. Essentially, its
Yeah.
stats actually work really well against the recruiters, as well.
Yeah.
And Mask Sorcerer, if you ever see it.
Yeah,
Well,
that
yeah.
too.
For the same reason it works well against the recruiters. But it is kind of interesting comparing the fusion deck to Harpy deck, because I do think the fusion deck has a lot of advantages over the Harpy deck. For instance, it brings out a bigger monster. It also, you don't have to play a card that's just a hard brick in the deck. Well, Poly's a hard brick, but Poly's basically your egotist, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have to play like a Harpy Lady Sisters. So it looks
I
like
guess the
Also,
trade-off.
it
Yeah, the
looks like
trade-off. Oh,
Dump Truck's
No.
about to beat Danny.
Oh, okay. So that will give you
All
your
right.
opponent here. Whoa! Polymerization here,
Yeah.
bringing out a twin-headed Thunder Dragon. I can only assume that they're going to go for a heavy storm here as well, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I probably would have tried a heavy first though before doing it.
Well, the poly
Just
was set,
because.
so
Yeah, I guess that too. Well, obviously, yeah. Okay,
oh,
we have
and
the
not
7
using
tools, so it
the
seems like
7
it was
tools.
okay.
Probably a heads-up play there if you have the read that Aratus is on a 7 tools of their own. And I think this
Yeah, that's
is
fair.
is the second game, so it's definitely reasonable to have that read. So they're going to set a couple here, and I assume maybe tribute off the Faith and maybe the Sangan as well. Now they're just going to go to end phase. So
Okay.
that to me
Oh yeah,
signals.
that,
I mean, that signals that they got to have like a Woboku or like a Mirror Force set. Probably Woboku more than Mirror Force, because, heavy would just be really rough here. But maybe if they set one, they're just like they're not gonna heavy lone macro,
then again, you have 3 of it for a reason too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, that will go
No.
through. So I'm
Okay.
very. Oh, I'm not sure why they didn't tribute the Faith.
That's it.
Hmm.
Yo, I just went to hang some laundry. Is that twin-headed freaking Thunder Dragon?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Helios Trident is
Yep.
on a fusion deck, which is very cool to see.
Mhm. Yeah.
So based.
Oh yeah. Trying to
And the,
replicate.
and the Gigatech Wolf.
Yep, you
Yep.
can check the graveyard and see that Gigatech Wolf there. So very cool to see. Unfortunately, if Muka Muka Turbo is more prevalent, I do think that makes the fusion deck a little bit worse potentially, because the Muka Mukas can get over your Gigatech Wolves. They can also potentially even get over a Labyrinth tank, although it is a bit rarer in that case. But still cool to see.
Okay.
They're thinking here. What options do they have? Probably.
I
just a
cannot watch the
cancel.
end of this, or else Dump Truck
Yeah,
will get
play
very
your
upset.
game. Let's see.
I'll
how you
see
do.
you whenever.
Yep.
Good luck.
Yeah. Good luck.
Look at the Gumo.
Interesting. They're pretty low. So I guess they don't really care about the halving. Although,
Yeah, if you think about it, the lower your life points are, the less you care, right?
exactly.
Oh,
Oh, and that's a
Oh.
7 tools. Wow. Okay.
dang.
This is about to be the cheapest Jirai Gumo of all time.
Well, the thing is, if that's Cannon Soldier, that Arito searches off the Sangan, then this is gonna be the end of the game here. Let's see if they are playing
That
it.
too.
They search out a
Oh.
witch, so maybe they're not on Cannon Soldier, or maybe they
I don't
already
know
have a
about that.
Cannon
Maybe
Soldier.
It's probably in hand.
Oh,
I would
yep, there
bet.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Cryo
Cryo
goes
will
zero.
still deal with it. So, yeah, that will be the end of
Yeah.
the game. And wow, sad to see the fusion deck not really make it here. But still, I mean,
Yeah.
cool that it got to bring out Twin Head. I mean, that's pretty
That
dope.
is nice.
Um,
Yeah. No, it technically did more than what I was able to do.
Muka Muka
currently.
Turbo
I
is just
really wanted-
running over every cool deck.
I mean, that's because
Yeah.
Muka Muka Turbo is I mean, it's cool. I think Muka Muka Turbo is cool on its own.
It is
Um,
a
It
very
is
cool deck.
cool. Yeah.
I mean, it's playing Muka Muka. Like that's a card that you read as a kid and thought it was cool.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Mini Cipher.
Definitely.
yeah, it's just
It
Life of the Sky
is.
Dragon if you think about it.
Which is awesome.
True.
And it's like a card that's like kind of bulk from that time. So like, it's something that a lot of people have if they were getting cards back then. And something that a lot of us
Let's
just tossed to the side. But
let's just say I
oh,
don't think Konami thought that it would be a good card.
yeah. And yet they were proven wrong.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The magical hat tech.
Wow, that was a very high value white magical hat there. Whew.
Yeah.
Which comes
I
down.
guess this is a bit of it's a bit of a little bit of hand control as
Yeah.
well. I
Which-
guess too.
I mean, that makes sense against meta that you expect to be packed with Exodias. I believe all the Exodia decks are out. I'm pretty sure that there were only 2. So, just like with STYK the other week when we did this in the locals, I'm not really sure how accurate this will necessarily reflect the actual like state of the metagame. If more people had played the Exodia deck, maybe it would have turned out differently. But yeah, I mean, I think this definitely shows that of the aggressive decks, Muka Muka Turbo so far is looking pretty good.
Let's just say Exodia sucks, so no one plays it.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, if you say that, then people will test it out. They're like, "Ooh, I gotta try and break it." And
Guys, please don't test it out. No, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. You definitely can't search out the pieces by turn like 5 or 6.
yeah,
Yeah. You
Uh,
totally can't try and do like an OTK with Ultimate Offering and like I don't know. Yeah.
Whoa,
That
whoa,
was
whoa.
honestly yeah.
well,
No, that was actually an idea I was trying to think of because of like I know OCG, I think they would play that. Even
yeah.
though Sanguine Witch like were completely different.
The
But,
issue with that here, I mean, it can pull off some combos. Like we saw that in one of the games shown on stream here with History of YGO1's deck actually earlier. And we also saw that in the Critter tournament itself with I think it was Paolo's deck. Paolo got an OTK with Cannon Soldiers and Sanguines and Witches.
Oh,
So
okay.
it can happen.
Was
Aratos,
yeah,
welcome
so-
to the chat here. You're on a pretty
Hello.
good win streak here. How's the deck feeling?
yeah.
The deck is feeling great so far.
Now, we've been discussing how good not Exodia, Muka Muka Turbo seems in this meta. Like, it's one of the decks that you don't look at and you're like, oh, that's obviously so much better than in Critter format. But there are a lot of things that made it a bit better, like just minor improvements. The third Witch and the third Sengan to just keep your hand stocked. Your Lost Wills being live more often because of the Mirror Forces. So there are some interesting things there.
I think of like all of the non-Exodia decks, Muka Muka probably has the best matchup into Exodia because you want to play the Thunder Dragons and then you can like sustain a main deck card destruction.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
very nice because card destruction just basically, if you're an Exodia player, you just got to hope your opponent does not draw into card destruction, because if they draw into card destruction, you get a piece in hand, you just lose the game. There's no recovery in this format. And speaking of no recovery, that's the end of this game 1 here. Wow.
So totally unbiased, but I need Aratos to win this tournament so I can vie for Muka Muka format.
Oh yeah, Muka format. The issue with that is
Muka
that
format.
like compared to Critter, Muka Muka Turbo is also a very good deck in Critter. So it's not like it's a distinct thing here, right? I would actually
Well, hey,
hoping-
Worm is usable in Yugi Kai, but it's certainly a deck you can choose to play.
Listen, I am the biggest champion of Worm out there. But I got to admit, Worm, it's not tier 1.
It's a card you can put in your deck.
It is a card.
Yeah.
People do put it in their decks, yeah. But it just
Yeah.
isn't the same.
It doesn't. It hits different.
Yeah. There's a funny comment here. Austin Billy Bob Joe says Exodia feels like the self decay from Yu-Gi-Oh format. like Master Duel and stuff. I mean, like if your opponent draws card destruction, then you have played a self decay kind of. If they fire it right away. But it's not like. So I do think there are some things that the Exodia can do to like combat card destruction a little bit. Because they don't necessarily have to reveal that they're on Exodia right away. Like we actually saw like Neb on Exodia earlier. They didn't search out the pieces right away. Because if your opponent knows that you've got a piece in hand, they're just gonna fire the card destruction. So you can actually like
Yeah,
bide your time. And
I think that's good, like both in this format and Critter as well, not to reveal you're on Exodia too soon.
yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to like hold as much information as I could.
Yeah, I think that was the smart play. And if your opponent didn't just desert you for 7,500, like
You
that's not
see,
something you can predict. So
what you do to make it convincing is you're an Exodia deck, you play card destruction, so when you activate it, they have no idea what's going on game 2, and you bring in Exodia, and they're like, whoa, 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 what's going on?
the big brain
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
I do think smoke screening into Exodia is unironically very good though.
I would do
Yeah,
it.
I would have smoke screen into Muka because they would know I'm in Exodia, so might as well play Muka because that's Thunder Dragon still.
Yeah, and I mean, as Reto said, like Muka can smoke screen into Exodia. Exodia can smoke screen right back into Muka as well. So, very very neat sort of synergies between the two strategies.
Mhm.
Oh, I just love Muka. It's such a cool card.
I had a friend who always like joke about Muka Muka being his favorite card before Critter took off. So trying to get him to play.
Yeah, that friend is a prophet.
Yeah.
Yeah, get him in here. I mean, maybe not MRD format, but like definitely have him play Critter.
They can pioneer they can build the greatest Muka Muka deck in this format. Come on.
That's true.
I thought you were going to say they could pioneer the MRD meta, and I'm like, do we really need that?
Sad I haven't been able to get him interested. I tried, but it's not working out.
Well,
I think he was playing in a video game. I'm trying to figure out which video game he played it in.
oh, okay. Yeah, there have been a couple. Maybe one of like or maybe Nightmare Troubadour. I'm trying to think of.
Or
I think it
or
was one of
Joey
the Game
the
Boy.
Passion.
Oh,
I think it was one.
the Game
Oh,
Boy,
Game
maybe
Boy.
Stairway to the Dusty
Eternal
Duel or
Duelist?
something. Or
One of those.
yeah.
One of the many
Ooh.
that existed.
Oh, this is a good play from Dump Truck. That's honestly a neat synergy with Last Will as well, where like since there are so many recruiters, you're likely to have monsters that are going to match up in stats, so you can just like get aggressive here. Maybe bring in a Mast or a White Magical Hat or something. But it looks like they might have decided out of White Magical Hat here. But either way, getting in for 1,800, not bad.
Awesome Billy Bob Joe says, I love Yugi Kaiba format because burn feels so good. Is there even like enough burn cards in that format?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Aggro Burn's a big deck.
Play.
I think Awesome Billy Bob Joe might be Samwise Gamgee. I think. I don't remember if that's them or not. But Samwise Gamgee actually pioneered the aggro burn deck in Yugi Kaiba. And I think that deck is really, really sick. Like, whenever
I guess there is just desserts, huh?
Yeah, there's Dust Desserts, there's Okazis, a bunch of that stuff. And there's also like very little spell and trap destruction outside of like D-Spell or like Trap Master. And so basically what you do is you just get aggressive, and you also have walls as well to protect yourself. And then you can get in with the walls, you can get in with like lodge-ins, things like that. And your opponent isn't going to Waboku early because people in Yugi Kaiba often save Waboku for later. And so they're playing around with Waboku, and they don't play around things like Triple Okazi or like Final Flame plus Okazi or whatever. And so you're actually able to kill them like fairly decently. So I think it's a really neat deck. I've actually played it like a fair bit. Just like whenever I play like a Yugi Kaiba game like that I'm not doing for a video, I generally tend to burn because it's just so fun. So yep, that is indeed Samwise Gamgee in chat. Yeah, thank you for that deck, by the way. That deck is, I love that deck. It's so fun. I really do think it's a bit slept on. Like, next Yugi Kaiba tournament that happens, I'm going to bring that deck because I think it actually has a really good matchup into certain decks in the meta right now.
Yeah. Now, is Burn going to win it though for
Hmm.
history?
That's the question.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to have just people top with Burn in every format.
Oh, I know
We-
you would.
we've got it in Treasure. We've got someone in like
Yeah.
the top like 8 for Yugi Kaiba. Um, we could get top 1. Just we got to get a
Top
first
one.
place win with Burn in every format.
Every
Yeah.
single format that's ever existed will have a burn top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the
God,
goal.
I'm. Yeah. Now that this is making me feel bad though for how I didn't work with Burn. God.
Nah, it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I don't mean to put pressure on. I'm just kidding.
I know it's fine.
I'm putting
It-
all of the
It's
pressure.
it's all just to set
Yeah.
up. Some people want to just watch the world burn joke. And
True. God.
We didn't
Yeah.
start the fire, but Ukazi sure did.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Dark Hole here is pretty big, especially hitting a Magician of Faith. Although that Magician of Faith, there weren't too many good targets, but still, getting back something is always decent.
So I'm rooting for Dump Truck here because him and myself are the two that had to play an extra round in this tournament.
Yeah, that's unfortunately how
That's
the buys sometimes work out, which is 10's kind of an awkward number for here, but yeah, I think like I generally tend to that as well because I think that it's like I don't know, they put more into it. So like, if you have to work harder for it, then you should be rewarded and stuff.
Hey, that's not how life works.
I know it's not how life works, but ideally,
the
ooh,
idea.
going oh yep, that is just the
Man.
end of the game here. Yeah. So we're going to
Mhm.
game 3.
Okay.
Yeah. I also am more of a fan of Muka Muka Turbo here, in terms of the 2 decks. So I'm also rooting for that. I'd really like a Muka Muka Mirror, just because that would be very funny. But
Yeah. Oh.
okay,
Looks
so
like
it
we're
looks like
getting
there
low
might be
there.
a bit of a gap in time. So I hope that the BRB is actually BRB and not AFK.
Well, he said we could talk about the Yada tournaments. I don't know if he plans to be
I mean,
away from
we did that on stream when in the Yada finals. So definitely.
How about Treasure?
Oh yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
idea. Because there is
We
a
should
treasure
probably
tournament
talk about
coming
yeah.
up this month, October 14th. So in just around 2 weeks.
I'm
And
personally a Relinquish fan.
oh yeah,
we
Relinquish is
we,
really
we
Yeah.
promise that the format's cool, guys. We promise. Just please try it.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that I think everyone thought going into it that it'd be like pretty bad because you've got the 3 hand rips, and so like people thought, oh, it's just gonna be worse Critter because there's a lot of similarities between the formats, but the hand rips are there, so it's like, oh, this is gonna be disgusting and stuff, and people are gonna get hand ripped to oblivion turn 1 and stuff. But I think we were talking during the Out of tournament about how in that format, even if you get hand ripped first turn, it's like devastating, but you can still come back from it and you can still win with like good play. I think treasure format, that's also very true. And it's arguably even more true in treasure format. And I think that the hand rips also provide a nice sort of balance against the double Sangan, double Witch, because based on how you play them, you can potentially save them for when your opponent adds something from deck to hand with a Witch or Sangan and cut them off of access that way. So
Hand
Yeah.
rips also like self-balance themselves. Like if you see them late game, they're actually like the worst cards to draw.
yeah, and outside of duo, they're all like neutral trades. They aren't +1s except for duo, and arguably the hand knowledge off of like the forceful and the confiscation are more valuable than the +1 advantage off the duo. So it's kind of a balance there.
Absolutely, especially as decks start using the graveyard more.
Yeah. And, you still have like Magician of Faith and Mask of Darkness and stuff. And I think, Spear Cretin comes out in that format as well. So that's another way to interact with the graveyard. But overall, like, it's still very similar to how Critter and, well, mainly how Critter interacts with the graveyard outside of a select few decks. But I think there's also like more deck variety in Treasure as well. Awesome Billy Bow Joe says, give me ideas for what to play in Treasure format. Honestly, if you want to do something Burn related, Burn did win the last Treasure format tournament. Now, to be fair, there were a lot less people in that tournament than we've since gotten in our monthly retro tournaments. But Burn is really good. You've got tons of chain energies to just burn your opponent away that way. And that can just be really, really brutal. You've also got tools. I'm not the biggest fan of tool, but people have played them, and they do have some value as well. And there's just a lot of very disgusting stuff you can do with Burn in Treasure. So that's a great deck to play. Neb mentioned Relinquished as well. And I do think Relinquished could potentially be good. I played Relinquished in Imperial format, which is the format right after Treasure format, and it actually did well enough to reach top 2. So, and it didn't receive like too much from the new cards introduced in Imperial. So I think there could be potential there for Relinquished to do well in Treasure. A personal favorite deck of mine is Cloud Control. I think that deck is really slept on, and actually is really, really strong.
It also has the extra recruiter for Relinquish.
Yeah, exactly. You've got the Sonic Birds and the Manjus. Or no, not
Clown
the Manjus, the
Control.
Senjus. But still. Really
And
good.
even Ratbox, which also like tends to play Clown as a target, it's like really good.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest. I think the Clown Control's the better Ratbox deck. They're very similar sort of axes to play on there. The tomatoes also add a lot to the format, I think. And I think people still are like experimenting with what exactly to put in as tomato end monsters to bring out. Like, of course, the Witches and Sangans are there, as well as the Cannon Soldier. But I know that people were experimenting at the start of the format with like Castle of Dark Illusion. I think that's a really interesting tech because it's basically like a 2K defender that you can search off tomatoes, switch to the defense, and prevent your opponent from hitting in next turn. So lots of cool stuff there. Awesome Billy Bob Joe says, I'm one of the people that don't like chain energy. Granted, it has its uses, but still. I think in future formats, I'd agree with you. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of chain energy after a certain point. But I do think that in Treasure format, it is kind of necessary to make the burn deck to function. And
unless you want to play like Toon Burn, which don't.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, tunes are, you can play tunes if you want, but tunes are really an uphill battle in Treasure. It's like, oof, it's deck
You
isn't
do
the
this.
best.
You do the really cool combo of using Toon World, getting out your Toon Summon Skull, doing the giant Trunade to put it back, and then it just gets fissured, and you cry.
Yep. Which is, yeah. But I mean, someone can maybe make tunes work. I don't know. They're like
I believe.
I think the closest, like I still have that soul.
Oh yeah,
control inspired tunes. I feel like that's the way to go.
Yeah, because you're playing Toon Summon Skull, you're playing Toon Blue Eyes potentially, and you can't attack anyways. So like, you know, why not get the free removal?
It was never really a downside. It was a synergy piece.
Exactly. This was their plan all along.
Yeah.
They're like, you're gonna be playing Magic.
Yeah.
God.
But there's a lot of really cool depth, I think, to discover in the format. And I feel like a lot of people have written it off as just like, you know, boneless critter. And I feel like that couldn't be further from the truth. So I just encourage as many people as possible to try out the format because it's just really fun. And I think that
I'm just saying, you can't play Banisher of the Light in Critter. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Well, actually, so Banisher is another sort of very interesting tech. That is that in Critter or does that come out in Imperial? That isn't. Oh, no,
I think
it
comes out in Treasure.
Yeah, it is in Treasure. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's a really cool card to play. I think I actually in my standard build I started bringing in Banishers instead of something like Giant Soldier. It was just a nice card to like deprive your opponent value off their recruiters, and stop their like Magicians of Faiths. So I think that's definitely a card to experiment with. But there's just so much room for experimentation.
Yeah. No, there's also like the equip decks too that have some potential as well. Obviously there's like the ones with the equip aggro with Megamorph as well, but I also been I played a little bit of this Maha Vilo variant that I also like too. But
Yeah, and I mean
I'm
we've seen Equip Aggro do well in like Android format. I think there is a lot of potential for it in Treasure format because you've got like the Acts of Despair, um, which are of course very good. So there is definitely potential there. But
Hey,
yeah,
I'm always down to cope on Mahavila.
I don't
yeah,
think Mahavilo unfortunately is very good, but the rest is pretty decent. Because I've like done the
I
math on
think it's fine.
Mahavilo,
But
and there's
yeah,
like
Well, here's the thing though. Why would you play a good monster when you can play a bad monster that gets a decent effect?
oh, that's the end of the game. But yeah, I didn't think
well,
of it
that's
that way.
true.
But
Yeah,
that actually is a
no,
good point. Mahavelo
I think
sweep.
that the main, yeah, no, I think the main trade off though is just that like it is a bit more like like, it's basically do you take the risk with your Agumo and like play the half the life points, or would you rather maybe go for something quote unquote more safe in that regard? And I think it also depends on what type of deck you're trying to play. I think with the Dragumo build, it's a lot more
Y'all
very
ever
aggressive.
think that they were scared of Mahavilo being searched off of Shining Angel? That's why they gave it that extra 50 attack.
Actually,
They
that probably is the
probably
reason.
were.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
Although
were, they were like, no, that's too good.
it isn't even the best off of Shining Angel. You need to equip it with stuff. But it looks like Aratos has hopped out of the call to get into their game.
Yeah, it would literally be
Right.
like a vanilla for an entire turn cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then
So
again, though, I do with its stats though, it does a similar thing of like being able to like just stop all the recruiter stuff from attacking it though.
yeah,
So it
Oh,
really
I
just
guess that's true. You couldn't like tomato into
yeah.
it.
the issue is like what
Well,
value are you getting off of playing Maha as opposed to like a Dark Elf or a Jiragumo, right?
The value is that it's cool.
I mean, I
yeah,
guess
that
there's value
too.
in that,
But
but
yeah.
like uh
And I guess it's about it's about less of the restriction, I guess, there too.
yeah, but if
But
you're
yeah.
playing that sort of deck where you're like going all in on equips and doing all that stuff, I feel like you don't necessarily care as much about that restriction because you're like
Their
going
game
for
is up.
damage and yeah.
Yeah. But I also think I think the thing too about the equips as well is sort of taking that approach of like it can be continuous removal as opposed to just a fissure. And
Yeah.
I feel like that works better with like Mahavilo, like doing it with Mahavilo, at least
late
as opposed to
late game
Agumo. Yeah.
equips is actually like really scary. Like sometimes you just have already used a lot of your outs and you're like, huh, this is a problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that too.
The issue is
And hey,
that
if you want to prove that Mahavilo is tier 1, you can join the tournament.
yeah,
Yeah, that
definitely like
too. Yeah.
I'm always happy to be proven wrong by strategies that like don't necessarily think are the best because it means that, people care enough about strategies to actually find a way to break them. And also it means that the meta is more diverse than we potentially thought. So I'm
Yeah.
never upset to be proven wrong in those sorts of cases. So definitely, as Colgate said, join the tournament and prove us wrong. But yeah,
Yeah.
Awesome
No.
Billy Bob Joe says, I shall stare at the list for a while. I think that's probably the best way to prepare. And then once you look at the lists and sort of synthesize your own brew, test it out in the Discord. We've got the format set to treasure in the Discord, so you can play rated games with Retrobot in there. Or you could just tag treasure players if you want a more casual match. But yeah, just get in there, play, and I look forward to seeing what people brew up. But if you want to look at past lists, they are both, I have a bunch of them on my channel, but there are also a ton on the Format Library website in the coverage of the past tournament. So definitely check out both those resources if you're interested.
Maybe it's my memory failing me, but I do feel like there was a good amount of videos that you put out for
Oh yeah,
Treasure.
oh yeah, there were a ton. They're all
It's
in
a
the
lot.
treasure playlist that I have. Um, so definitely check those
Yeah.
out.
Which you all should watch in order.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean that's the best way to experience my content. Just follow the entire journey, see the growth in real time. Uh,
Mm,
The evolution.
exactly. We may not be
yeah.
playing Pokemon, but there's still evolution here.
Yeah. Gosh. I just saw Rados is playing Trap Hole, and like I think some people have been playing it with this event. Like I can sort of understand why.
Yeah,
It's basically like a reactive fissure, but I don't know. Like I felt like to me, it's like I just feel like that's just a wasted slot to get like Exodia, I guess. But I guess like you said, with this how this tournament ended up, it didn't matter as much. But yeah,
Yeah, if you got the meta call. A Just Desserts firing now is a bad sign for Aratos, and it looks like that Raigeki will come down and clear the board away. Going to follow it up with a Jirai Gumo here.
Gumo.
Bit of a risky play, but if that's all you can do, you gotta go for it. Let's see what gets called here. Heads or tails?
Yeah, gotta definitely think on that. All right.
Yeah.
It's only risky if you call it
And there
wrong,
you
if you
go.
think about it.
Yeah, exactly. As we saw
Yeah,
there,
sure.
no risk.
Just get good.
There was not any risk involved.
I was
Oh,
doing
wait.
like a progression.
that would be well, in locals we're actually kind of having a progression. So that's kind of fun for like people who've gotten into the channel like lately, just to sort of see the journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
doing like the Simo style, and like we were both playing Jirai Gumo, and we got every toss right like 15 times in a row.
Oh wow.
Man.
Yeah.
That could not be
See,
me. It
You just have to believe. I literally it was just like me with Barrel Dragon versus Food. I got the call right like 6 out of 7 times or something. And I'm just like, this is the greatest card ever. You can't this is the best card of all time.
just guaranteed
Yeah.
removal.
Might have been
yeah.
10, but
Yeah.
Just says once per turn, pop a monster. That's it, right?
Well, the funny thing
Yeah.
about Barrel Dragon is that its odds are, I believe, the same as the odds on Jirai Gumo. It's just 50-50.
Yeah. It's the
yeah. That's wait, is
They-
it?
yeah, they just make it more confusing with the whole you have to get 2 heads out of 3, but I think that's how it works.
That's right, actually, yeah. I feel like they could have just said, hey, heads or tails.
Yeah.
I know. They have to make it special though, it needs
They
more
have to make you
heads.
feel like it hits more. This is like to punish you for not paying attention in math class.
Exactly.
I think it's because it's like 3
Yeah.
cannons on it.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. To be fair, that's actually why.
The design reason.
Yeah, that
But
have that
promise
Russian
you-
roulette feel,
I promise you, they could have just printed Barrel Dragon saying once per turn you could just destroy 3 monsters on the field, and it still would have been just okay.
yeah,
Hot take, baby.
the double tributes. It's so unfortunate.
Yeah.
The double tributes.
It's rough, and you can't even get priority on it if you're tributing like a second or wish, which is what you normally want to tribute anyways.
Ooh, that's a very interesting play from Aratos here. Firing a Waboku to preserve the Cannon Soldier. And I think that was something that you had to 7 tools there if you're History of Wagio 1, because normally Aratos might be fine taking that trade, but seems like they got something up their sleeve there.
Yeah. All right. Ooh, right.
Yep, and that was the reason. This is still going to be pretty good here. Pretty
Gosh.
dangerous situation, honestly, for both players.
Yeah. All right.
Lodgin
Got
comes
the
down.
Jin.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's probably.
Yeah, take the
Wow.
crash. Yeah.
It's just kind of
And the set.
unfortunate, but maybe it's
Yeah.
Mirror Force set, maybe it's Waboku set. We're just checking the graveyard to see. Yeah, and they're gonna.
Grapple one time.
Yeah, I think that's the smart play there. Tributing out that Thunder Dragon, is trying to hit in. Will we see a Mirror Force or? Okay, that'll be
Oh.
it.
Well,
Whew.
yeah.
I'm not sure I could have done much against that anyways. They said forgot about that, but I'm not sure what they would have done otherwise, because
because if you hit the witch, then they just crash lodge in and summon like another small monster anyways.
yeah, because you can search out something off Witch, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like you search out Cannon Soldier if you got one on deck, then
Yeah.
that's still GG. So yeah, but I don't know. They might not have one left in deck, so that could be something, I guess. But yeah, Rain Dance brought up a deck that I forgot from Treasure Format, which is Flash Assailant Reverse Trap for Treasure Win. And yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
that's something people were brewing with. They were brewing with the Flash Assailant Reverse Trap OTK strat. Just get a bunch of cards in hand, decrease Flash Assailant to nothing, and then reverse trap it all back. It's genius. Uh,
Yeah.
it actually is
I
very,
s-
very clever.
I still hold that Flash Assailant was an underrated card, but
Honestly,
hopefully,
it did pretty decently in the testing. But the issue is that like it's just such a wonky strategy with like how you play it. Because if you have Flash Assailant on its own, you need to commit as much support as possible. And then if you draw reverse drop
yeah,
later, then it's just kind of like, well, what do I do here?
yeah. And if you played in
Yeah.
a good stuff deck, it means that like even if you top deck Flash Assailant, feels great, and then next turn you have to play the next card that you draw. Otherwise, it's just a 1600 guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but
That's why I definitely feel like you wanted just to sort of play a game where you're just setting everything, have this guy, and then just protect the castle.
yeah,
You got solemns and like just be like, that's what are you gonna do? even
Exactly.
though even though they'll have like a I feel like the only sad part is that it can only go up to 2k, and then when Jiraigumo comes down, you just feel bad. But yeah,
yeah, and that's why I think Jiraigumo is the best of the beaters at this point. Like I know that's people have gone back and forth on that, where people say, "Oh, but Dark Elf is less of a cost." Sure, but the thing is, 2K defenders are still meta relevant in Treasure, and as long as they are, it doesn't really like Dark Elf just feels kind of bad. Like you can't clear everything that you'd reasonably expect to see, and so it's like it's just kind of awkward. But Dark Hole here kind of rough because it's for YJ1. We'll get 2 searches here. But Arados also gets a search and a summon. So if they bring out like Mass Sorcerer or White Magical Hat, that could be pretty good here. But we'll just have to see what happens. But yeah, one of the locals in the future will actually be a Treasure Locals. So look forward to that. That'll be the one right before the actual tournament happens. Um, and it should be a lot of fun. I'm curious to see what people will bring in preparation for that. But it's a great place to test out decks as well.
yeah, I think it would, I think, though, when it happens, break up the chronological timeline, which is a little
Yeah.
sad, but
Yeah, just barely. Because next week would
yeah.
be Critter, and then the week after would normally be MRL, but we'll have to do Treasure. We could
Well,
potentially skip
there's a format before that that involves a certain
Oh yeah, Mecha as well. I forgot about Mecha. Yeah.
yes,
Um,
the really cool format actually.
yeah, Mecha is going to be a lot of fun. For people who don't know what Mecha is, it's the format that comes when Tournament Pack 1 is released. So it still uses the Critter ban list. And pretty much the card pool is mostly the same. However, it also introduces Mechanical Chaser, which changes the base stat line on your beaters. And it also introduces fusion substitute monsters like Gods with the Third Eye, and Versaga the Destroyer, and Beast King of the Swamp. And there's actually a really cool fusion substitute deck that you can do with those monsters, making it into like almost like a fusion toolbox. Because there are some cards like, Can Soldier goes into Labyrinth Tank, and you're playing Can Soldier anyways, so you can just fusion substitute and Can Soldier into a Labyrinth Tank. You can also go into Twin-Head Thunder Dragon with your double Thunder Dragons. You can go into Musician King with your Witch of the Black Forest. A lot of cool stuff to do there. Rainaz asked, did we not already break the local sequence to play Yada? I'm trying to remember when we did LOB for it. Was that before or after Yada? It might have been. You might be right.
Maybe true. It may be true. So
Yeah.
you know what,
After we catch up on the local sequence, are we just gonna like do the popular ones?
We might just start again. It kind of depends also where I am in terms of the format that I'm at in my videos.
too.
When that happens.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking a lot as well, because we're not like quite at the GX era. We still got a lot to go. Like after
Got a
Yada.
lot to go.
I mean, there's like
Yeah.
there's the Magician's Forest format, which people are still debating the actual name of, that we're gonna call it. There's Chaos formats as well, and also Goat. Well, Goat is technically GX, but the format's like right before Goat, which will be very similar to Goat. There's also that to explore as well. So that's a
Yeah.
fair amount left. But I have sort of been considering when we get to GX what we're actually going to do for locals, because I think one of the things that has made this channel and this community so unique is that we do show off a lot of DM era gameplay, and we have a bunch of DM era events. And I feel like that's a format or an era in Yu-Gi-Oh's history that is not really focused on in a lot of retro communities. Because like if you want to play something that feels like it's from that era, you play GOAT, right? And that's what's been played for most of the time for this channel.
Well,
And-
Goat feels like a DM era format even, so like even
Exactly.
then, GX can't win.
Yeah, exactly. So you just play GOAT if you want DM era stuff. But I do want to keep providing a place for people who, got into the channel for the DM era stuff and want to still have a place to play DM era stuff to actually, have a place to keep doing that. And so I'm kind of debating maybe setting up like 2 locals a week, or like that might be a bit too much, but just having like a DM era locals and a GX locals or something, and then doing something like that. It also depends on how big the channel and community are at that point in time.
Mhm.
Yeah, but if I ever get to the point where this can be like a full-time job for me, then I could definitely like do that sort of thing. But we're still a while away from that, so it'll be interesting to sort of see exactly how we navigate that. And I'll definitely be asking more in the community once we start reaching that point, like what people exactly want to do. But it'll be an interesting time for sure.
So y'all know if you want more tournaments, subscribe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean we're
join the
on
Discord.
track to hit 1,000 by the end of this year, so that would be really awesome. So if you're watching and you're not subscribed, definitely do subscribe, and also leave a like as well if you haven't liked the stream already. It really does help out a lot.
I don't get something. I don't get how there's 10 viewers and only 8 likes. What's going on here, guys?
That's
Yeah,
true.
come on.
I will say I am one of those viewers because that's how I read the chat. So
It jumped to 9. It works. It
hey, there we
works.
go.
Yeah.
So I'm the
alright.
last one. I don't know how to actually like one on my phone, but I'll like it afterwards on my channel. So that's all 10. So, but if we could get 11,
If we could get 11, oh baby.
Yeah. Alright.
Yeah.
One like equals 1 pog emoji. Come on.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
join the
We
Discord
got-
too. We got pog emojis.
Yeah. God.
Did we just that was the funniest heavy I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, heavy on Ultimate Offering is pretty decent. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. But also like the interaction with like the counters. That's what I feel like those are always the scariest heavies to deal with, is like when they have something, when you think you have something, but they have something, and then you think you have something.
It's the
that's
mind
something, but they-
games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I remember actually in the first Critter Format finals that I live streamed, it was Aratos versus it was the Critter God, Lucas, who had been going through just on a tear, like an undefeated tear. And it was one of the most intense matches that I've seen, because it was a mass control mirror, and they both had like full back row, and someone fired heavy, and there was a solemn chain that happened, and like a 7 tools was fired and solemn was fired. It was just insane. It was really, really cool to watch. Rain Dance asks in the chat, Patreon when? Come on, B-Sox. And yeah, I have been thinking about doing like a Patreon or channel memberships. I just don't quite know what I'd put on there. Because I like making the general like deck profiles just available to the public, because I view them as like a resource. So that would be a question of like what the premium content would be. But if any of y'all have ideas, just let me know in the chat or on the Discord. And yeah, that'd be something I'd be down to do. But it looks like Aratos has won this game pretty handily too. I think that's a 2-0 win. Yep, that's a 2-0 win. So let's see if we can get them both in chat again and hear their thoughts on the deck. We weren't really commenting on this too much, but I thought it was actually some really good gameplay here. And very cool to see. I felt like the Muka Muka deck had the game in control like a lot of the time. It seemed very powerful. So But I don't know. We'll,
Yeah.
we'll have to see each duelist's reaction to it when they jump in the voice chat here.
Okay, hear me out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The MVP of this format might actually be 7 Tools of the Bandit.
Yeah, I'd agree. But
It's definitely gonna be helpful for sure.
yeah, because it's just
Like, it's not this good in Critter.
yeah, I mean, I think 7 Tools should see more play in Critter, honestly. 'Cause it is very strong. But we've got the
Yeah.
two finalists here to talk about the cards in the meta, potentially better than we can. So let's start with the winner of this locals, Aratos. What do you think of your deck and the different cards that you potentially use that are maybe being a bit slept on by some of the other players?
Yeah, I'm playing triple 7 tools. I think the format, it's just like a lot faster than it is in what you call it, Critter. And the increase in mirror force means like you want to play solemns on traps more frequently. So I think 7 tools is better than solemn, especially since burn is more of an option here.
Yeah, I think that makes a
Correct.
lot of sense because
Or
I
even
mean,
like
Blah, you were on a
uh,
burn deck, right?
Yeah, because Exodia, I was expecting more of that, and I somehow made it to the finals despite losing game 1
Yeah. So
when I wasn't phasing Exodia.
So it does show that Burn is a respectable deck on its own besides Exodia, but it is unfortunate. I will say I really wanted more Exodia players to join because I feel like we got a relatively small sample size, but it's tough to say whether this locals actually says like, oh, Exodia is actually a bad deck, or if it's just not enough people playing it to really tell.
I mean, I definitely wanted to see more Exodia as well. Like my deck was specifically designed for Exodia, and Burn was more of an afterthought.
Hmm.
Well, I forgot card destruction existed, so I'm glad people didn't use Exodia.
I main deck card destruction.
I
Yeah.
had
Yeah,
I think
the
a good
main
amount
entire
of
too.
time.
people, yeah. And because it is just like such a Exodia is such a threat, and card destruction is a way around that. Oh, Helios Strider is in the comments as well, talking about their deck, which was very interesting. It was the Labyrinth Tank Turbo deck from Critter, but changed a bit. They said the main change they made was adding extra 7 tools. So that shows a lot of people I think are trying out the 7 tools tech and seeing pretty good results here. So that'll definitely be something. If people do play this format in the future, I think that they'll definitely sort of pivot to that over any Psalms that they were playing.
Yeah. Honestly, I've been on the idea though. Actually, of maybe you play both. Maybe it doesn't even necessarily have to be like 3-3, but maybe like a 2-2 of each. Because sometimes I feel like there's points where 7 tools isn't as great in the late game compared to Solemn. So I think it just really, I don't know. I'd be fine with sort of playing like that.
Yo,
in
hear
my
me
opinion.
out. 3 7 Tools and 1 Solemn.
I mean,
Maybe.
could
You
be.
know,
I don't know.
maybe.
People
That late game Solemn though.
people will have to check
Yeah,
out
I
the
know.
ratios for this if they want to optimize
Yes.
them further. Um,
Mm.
but it is interesting. Do you all who played in this locals, do you all think that this format will get played in the future at all? Do you think that there are merits to it over Critter? Or do you think that it's just like a bit of a curiosity and that Critter's just generally the better thing to be doing?
I think when a
Critter.
deck is like oppressive enough to the point you need to play main deck card destruction, that's usually a sign the format could use some work. But I mean it is an interesting format to play for sure.
Yeah,
It,
but Cannon Burn, I knew would actually do well here because Exodia struggles against Burn. We see it in Yugi Kaiba. It's a continuation of what was going on before. Burn, just sheer aggression. That's why you saw all these aggressive decks just pop up to face Exodia.
yeah, I think
And then
that's the
Exodia
thing.
just went home.
Yeah.
Other
that's
than
it.
Neb. So I
Yeah.
ended up
Well,
beating with 3 Just Desserts.
yeah, that Jester's play was something. But it's
I
interesting
got lucky,
because
honestly.
we were actually discussing after like when that duel happened and also after there were some like slight things that could have changed that could have potentially allowed Neb to win that potentially. Um,
Yes.
even after the triple just desserts. So I think that does show that Exodia is still extremely powerful, even if it didn't necessarily get the best showing here because it had such a small sample size. So definitely
I
don't
mean,
count it.
I was side decking Exodia as well. I had the Exodia smoke screen, which I think is really powerful, like especially if your opponent isn't expecting it. Game two, like they definitely won't have any card destructions against you. Like they saw you're playing Muka Muka, you have Thunder Dragons, card destruction is really bad into you. So you bring in the Exodia and they're kind of just shit out of luck.
Yeah,
I sure
Yeah.
wasn't expecting it.
and it's
I
interesting.
kept
It's
in my
interesting
just
too.
desserts just
Well,
in case.
yeah, Judge Desserts has some utility against like other decks as well. Like not as much utility, but still, if people like overcommit to board, it can be really really devastating. But it is interesting too because I feel like, you know, once that becomes a popular enough strategy, then people start keeping in things like card destruction, and then you can then not side into Exodia, and so it's like a bit of a mind game after a certain point,
Yeah.
where like if you
Or
both
just cut
know
one card
about that
destruction.
strategy, then it's a bit interesting to play around. But yeah, it's really cool to see how Exodia dominance really does change a format. Even if we didn't actually see Exodia itself at really much at all this night. So
See, what you do is you main deck card destruction and you just take the -1 like a champ, even if it's against another matchup.
yeah,
Yeah.
I,
But even like I think that's the thing too. When you're talking with Exodia, I think maybe the appeal as well potentially with this format is that while yes, Exodia is a thing, if you want to maybe try and play more aggressive decks, I think this definitely could be a format to do so. Just because it's like, well, if you're gonna expect that type of matchup, I guess like that could basically be the case. So yeah.
yeah.
Ironically, what we said about LOB could, to an extent, also apply here. Like there's a three-way format. You have Exodia, Burn, and general aggressiveness in Muka Muka Turbo.
Well, it's a little bit different here because
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, Aratus was mentioning earlier as well. Like Muka Muka Turbo does have a decent matchup into Exodia. Like, um, so it's a bit tricky because I feel like it's honestly doesn't feel like a triangle meta. It feels more like Exodia is a very sort of 50-50 deck, you know, like either it's able to do its combos and stuff and get the pieces to hand and the opponent does not have a card destruction in time, or it doesn't. And, you know, there are some decks that can accelerate that clock a little bit, but really oftentimes it just does come down to a game of speed, and different decks approach that speed in different ways. But it doesn't really feel like a triangle meta from what I've seen here. But again, you know, we didn't see much Exodia here, so it's tough to really draw too much of a
I was
judgment on it.
thinking of it more in terms of we have three deck styles that definitively work.
Well, the triangle meta isn't necessarily just having three deck styles. It's about one deck
How
style
they
beating another deck
rotate
style
and
and being
who
weak to
beats
another.
who.
And then it's basically a cycle, right? It's like rock paper scissors,
Yes.
right?
I'm actually
It
surprised I didn't see anyone try to like do white magical hat or like goblin
Oh, we
style
saw
Robin
Dumbstruck
Goblin
on
stuff.
White
Yeah.
Magical Hat.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
I
that's
that's
got
true.
pretty
Yeah,
cool
you're
to
right. You're
see.
right.
I was thankful I wasn't playing Exodia.
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, Robin Goblin too definitely could have been something people tried
Yeah.
as well.
I will say I know that some people were on Robin Goblin as well. So it is something that people were testing out. But I think White Magical Hat's a really nice card because it's searchable off of Sandgate and Witch. Although it does play poorly into Mirror Force. So that's sort of the trade-off there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if you're playing like 3 7 tools, like you got like an even
At
higher
least that.
likelihood to connect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or even like or 7 tool Solemn, but having at least like
Yes.
a 2-2 thing going for them. And I think the thing too with Solemn, I know there's definitely like debate with that, but I think the thing that Solemn also does have going for it is that against Exodia, if you need to like stop Last Will or them summoning Cannon Soldier, you can just Solemn them, and they can't really, and they need to have like specific ways to sort of deal with that.
You can also
Interaction.
technically
Yeah.
solemn like a Sangan or Witch summon. Uh, of
Yeah,
course, they
that's
can
it.
play around that by like setting it, but like theoretically,
Yeah.
That's another thing too, yeah. So that's what I like about Solemn as well. In that regard, I think it has really decent applications.
I mean, one
Yeah.
one negative to using Solemn on a critter in this format over critter format is there's 6 of them here, so it's much less likely that you Solemn that critter and they're just off the chain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
That's why I think it's better for like Cannon Soldier or Last Whip.
yeah, because it's too high risk, low reward in the critter or witch case. But there are cases where that can pop up, you know, if it's a very simplified game state potentially. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's curious. I you know, maybe we'll revisit this format in a future locals or something. But I encourage people, if they are sort of thinking about this format and thinking about like, well, no one's exploring it, but there are open questions there. If you want to answer those open questions or at least dive deeper into the truth, definitely try out the format and see how it goes. It may not necessarily reach the same competitive levels of critter format because critter format is, I think, the better format overall. And the formats are just too similar to really set this apart as its own distinct thing. But I do know that like oftentimes having an open question like that can definitely inspire people to try and solve it. So I look forward to seeing the people who do. But my voice is starting to get a bit worn out. So I'll probably call the stream off pretty soon. But thank you all for playing and for joining. And this was a really fun one. So I look forward to the next locals, which will actually next locals. Yeah, we'll probably just do critter. We probably won't skip that as it is a pretty popular format that's pretty fun. So I look forward to seeing what y'all bring for critter. And then after that, we won't quite be in Mecca. We'll be in Treasure for the tournament, and then we'll dive into Mecca. So that'll be the next sort of unlimited format, or at least a
In
format that
quotes,
is only really played here.
unlimited.
But yeah, a format that's only really played here. So if y'all are interested in that, definitely subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be notified when I stream these locals. Sign up for the Discord, or I guess not sign up, but just head on over to the Discord, and join in on a future event. And yeah, the bigger we get these tournaments, the more people experiment and the more fun we have, I think. So it should be fun. But that's gonna be all for me. So again, leave a like on the video. And oh yeah, and Helios Strider says thanks for hosting and thank you to everyone else who played. And I agree with those 100%. I'm always happy to host. And yeah, thank you again for everyone who played and made this so fun. But with that, I'm gonna be signing off here. So until next time, I've been Ben from YG Up from Zero. I'm signing off.
Ouch.
Right.